your life, okay?
Good evening, viewers, wherever you are watching us from. This is Mr Knwilimba of the TV Workwith family, bringing you another episode of hearing from constituencies. And today we are not going to hear from the constituencies as such. What we thought we should do was to bring the Permanent Secretary, Technical Services at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. And that is Mr. Wisdom Bwalya. Would like to apologize for starting the program late. Our guest was busy, and he's actually still busy. And because of that, we are going to have a shorter program tonight. Perhaps within the next 30 minutes, we should be winding down. Welcome, PS.
Thank you, Mr. Mapanza. And how is the evening?
The evening is very well. It has been raining heavily today, but we are fine. Now, since we don't have much time today, I will quickly go into the program. The first question really is just to know you. Who is, Mr. Wisdom Bwalya as a person, not as PS?
Oh, thank you. Wisdom Bwalya is a person that has been around and has worked in local government for closer to 3 decades. Wisdom Bwalya has worked in a number of local authorities, starting from some that are in the rural parts of Zambia. Then he also has had an opportunity to work in the bigger municipalities, and also having served in the, I think, 3 city councils in the country, with my last station having been in Chipata. Chipata is based in the eastern part of Zambia. And until my appointment as a permanent secretary on 19th November, I had spent all my life in the local government. So basically, this is what I can say.
Congratulations, by the way, for your appointment. And you are the right person. You have been in the local government for a long, long time.
For
So,
sure.
okay, having said that, what is your role then as PS Technical Services?
Yes, Mr. Mapanza, I must make a mention that the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development is actually managed by two permanent secretaries, one being in charge of administration and the other one being in charge of technical services. And the one in charge of technical services happens to be the person you are speaking to right now. My role actually, I can basically say I'm in charge of dealing with the technical aspects, and also the rural development portfolio lies with my office. When I talk about rural development, basically it's a situation where I'm trying to make it clear that the current vision of our government is that for a very, very long time now, I think concentration has been on the urban areas. And this has brought about a situation where the rural parts of Zambia have, to some extent, remained neglected. And now we are trying to say, let's change the narratives and ensure that I think the people in the rural outskirts there also start seeing the benefit of having a government. And basically, this is where now I come in as the PS Technical Services with focus on the rural outskirts. And basically, this is what I'm responsible for as PS Technical Services.
And thank you so much. And so I understand that it's the CDF is your responsibility.
Yes, I must be very clear. It's not just my responsibility. Both permanent secretaries, we have the responsibility of managing the constituency development fund, but to a larger extent, because we are saying this fund should benefit the rural folks, and in that case, have a larger, I think, portion of dealing with the CDF. My counterpart looks at CDF from the management of the fund itself. When it is gotten from the Ministry of Finance, it sits and the disbursement. But when it gets down there, the way it is dispersed, utilized, and the like, I actually come in now to provide technical services using our structures in the at district levels and the like.
Mm-hmm.
I must make a mention that probably a brief history on CDF is that this is a fund that was introduced way back in 1995 to address micro projects in the districts. And over years, it has grown to a point now that with a new Dawn government, it is now been pushed from the 1.6 million to the 25.7 million. I thought I should just, I think, make a mention of this.
That has been a significant increase, hasn't it?
Precisely, it has been a very, very significant increase. And in that case, I must hasten to say that so much is expected because it has doubled. I think it has actually been increased 12 folds, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Would you help us then to understand the objectives of the CDF?
One of the many objectives is basically to try and I think improve the lives of the people, especially the rural communities, like I've said. I did allude to the fact that for years, in terms of development, we've concentrated in the cities or urban centers at the expense of the people that I think are so critical in the running of our countries, the rural dwellers. You realize, Mr. Mapanza, that when it comes to issues of voting, people out there go out in numbers to vote for the governments that they need. But what have been the rewards? Almost nothing. And this is why we're saying the New Dawn government want to change the narratives and ensure that people start seeing the benefit of having a government in place.
Indeed, as I said, it has been a significant increase. I mean, previously it was 1.6 million per constituency, and
Yes.
sometimes that money, the constituents, some of the constituents never even receive that money sometimes, and
Indeed.
many people were not even aware how it was managed. Now, with this huge increment, what foundation has been laid to, for prudent management of the CDF?
Yeah, great. That is a very good question. Firstly, we have the Office of the Auditor General, which provides, I think, oversight in terms of how this money is going to be managed. Apart from that, this money will be channeled through local authorities. We have 116 local authorities. And then when we look at constituencies, they stand at 156 constituencies. So you have a situation where, for instance, Lusaka has 7 constituencies, Kitwe has about 5 constituencies. Ndola, which is a city, has 4 constituencies. So in terms of management and to ensure that there is no misapplication or misappropriation of these funds, systems have been put in place by, I think, strengthening the Auditor General's role in the management of CDF, and also ensuring that the local authorities that have the responsibility of managing or holding accounts for constituency development funds, they are actually brought to speed in terms of, I think, managing finances. We have the control of internal audit at a government level sitting under the Minister of Finance. This office is solely responsible for ensuring that local authorities manage this fund prudently. And based on that, I must also make a mention that with the Public Finance Management Act, which is a very, very, I think, strong piece of law, that ensures or tries to ensure that the management of public resources like the constituency development fund is done within the confines of the law. We have the ZPPA Act, which also is a very, very strong piece of law when it comes to aspects of procurement. So all these aspects are meant to ensure that there is no abuse when it comes to the utilization, management, and even disbursement of this fund called the CDF.
Now, from our previous experience, people have abused resources massively, and even now, I've heard some people saying, "Well, no, yeah, we are going to form cooperatives." Even the youth, we are going to form cooperatives, but when we receive the money, we are going to share it ourselves. What would you say to such people?
Mr. Mapanza, I'm glad that you are talking about something that has also come to my attention. There is a lot of excitement out there, people trying to form companies quickly, registering with PACRA, but I can assure you that there will be no room. In the first place, these funds will be sent to constituencies, and these constituencies, they know the people or the companies or the cooperatives that exist. So it will be actually foolish for anyone, allow me to use that term, to hurriedly register a company with a view to abusing the CDF. The systems that have been put in place, firstly, will not allow for that kind of situation. We are trying to have a watertight system and ensure that this fund is meant to benefit the vulnerable. We have people that for a long, long time, they've never seen the benefit of having a government in place. And our role now as a new government is to ensure that the resources, mind you, we are talking decentralization here, we are talking devolution. And when you talk about decentralization, we are basically saying the people out there who have the power to decide on what is good for them. things will not be managed centrally. We want the people that are in a particular constituency to decide what is good for them, to decide how they are going to utilize this money, to decide which company they contract, and to empower. I'll make a mention that, you see, people thought this was not going to happen, but as I speak to you now, this fund was introduced, I think, late last year, in the last quarter of last year. And there was assurance from the president that come January, this money, the CDF, will start flowing to constituencies. As I speak to you now, already the bursary component has been disbursed to all the 156 constituencies. There is no selecting whether one is sitting in an opposition area or in an area where the ruling party has presence. We are objectively disbursing this fund equally and equitably. So as I speak to you now, the money for bursaries has been disbursed to all the 156 constituencies. And I think people should start appreciating and get excited with this kind of development. Our president means what he says. Our government is equal to the task, and we're just moving in that direction.
It's great that you have said, the component for bursaries has already been released. I think the question to ask really around that is, are university and college students eligible to get funding from CDF?
For now, our concentration is on the secondary schools and the, what can I say, the TVETA inclined institutions. In this case, the trade schools and the like. That's where we are standing as at now. Remember that for universities, under the Ministry of Higher Education, there is a loans component, things like that. So they are addressing that. So with the CDF, I think we are restricted to the secondary schools and the trade schools.
Okay. Would agriculture colleges fall under that, or they are outside that?
I'm not too sure on that one. I wouldn't want to actually give a statement that may not be sitting well. So for now, I think you may pardon me. I would want to speak on things where I can give you, I think, factual information.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I bring in somebody, I think there's Dr. Tobias Mutale. Before I bring him in, let me ask you one more question. What is the role of MPs versus ward development committees? Is there likely to be a conflict?
Yeah, first it's important probably to define the ward development committees. Ward development committees are basically sub-district structures, which in this case will be the entry points in terms of, I think, development. Because previously what has been happening is that the sub-district structures were not very active. Now we are saying here, in the management of the CDF, if one has got to apply, whether it is from the bursary perspective or you want empowerment, anything has to start from the WDCs, in this case, the ward development committees, and then it will be escalated to the constituency development fund, with the local authorities also coming into the picture in terms of managing the fund. What is the role of a member of parliament? Firstly, the member of parliament, you realize, is in charge of the constituency and also sits on the constituency development fund committee as a member in this equation. So you realize that I think there is so much attention by the electorates on the role of a member of parliament. Apart from being responsible for making laws or the legislative aspect, the member of parliament in this context also becomes very key when it comes to developmental issues. because most of the problems, most of the issues by the people in your constituency are always brought to the attention of the member of parliament. So in this case, there is a strong link between the WDCs and the office of the member of parliament, and it is expected that the two entities should work in collaboration or work together.
Indeed, I asked that question because of late I've been hearing members of parliament making promises of what the CDF will do in their constituencies. Now, should these promises be taken as granted, or they'll be subjected to decisions that come from communities?
No, firstly, the way we are this process is going to manage, we should actually go back to the concept of decentralization vis-a-vis devolution. We are saying give people to the power, give power to the people, and the people will have to decide what is good for them. In this scenario, members of parliament will also have to work with the people, because development will not be that which is imposed, but it should come from the needs of people. What is it that they want? So members of parliament, I think per se, will not dictate, but they have to move with the people. What is it that, for instance, if people in a given locality want a school, the member of parliament should buy into that. If people in a locality want balls, the member of parliament should buy into that. It goes without saying, even when they're talking, looking at the health sector, the member of parliament should hear what the people want and not impose or dictate. So I think they will have to play complementary roles in this context.
Indeed, that is really an important point. Any project that should be funded from CDF should come from the communities themselves. Dr. Mutale, could you greet the viewers and guests and make your contribution?
Good evening, Mr. Knwilimba. What a wonderful topic you have. Rural development is very important. Good evening, Wisdom Bwalya, our PS.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. I know that rural areas, they thrive on agriculture. Nearly 90% of the people in the rural areas, they are involved in agriculture. And among those who are working in the rural areas are young people. But most of them, they end up leaving the rural areas and going to towns or cities where apparently everything is located. How are you and the UPND government going to ensure that agriculture is attractive for young people and all the people who live in the rural areas?
Thanks. That is a very, I think, very valid observation. Probably I'll start by stating that when you look at the way this CDF fund is structured, we have 100%. Out of the 100%, 60% of this is meant for community empowerment, while I think about 20% or so is meant for women and youth empowerment. Then the 20%, that's what is, I think, set aside for bursaries and skills development. So the 60% out of the 25.9 million is meant to address various sectors. And in this regard, agriculture is one aspect that I think is eligible to be funded. And what we are saying is that any well-meaning youth, any well-meaning citizen that is, I think, wanting in terms of, I think, funds, will do well to, I think, make an attempt to try and see if he or she can benefit from this fund. This fund is meant for well-meaning people. Hello?
Go on, please. I think
Oh,
we may have
sorry
lost
for
you.
that. There was an incoming call on my phone.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Sorry. I believe I've not lost my thought process. So this fund is basically also meant to address, among many areas, the agriculture sector, and the people would do well to actually apply. There are modalities or a criteria that will be put in place. So for as long as one qualifies, he or she will actually benefit from this fund. And my encouragement, especially to the youths, is to take advantage of this fund and to definitely see them improving, I think, their way of life.
Thank you, Bwalya. Before we continue, let's do some marketing here. For
Okay.
all you viewers, we appeal for you to give us some stars. You know, when you give us stars, that's how TV Bakwetu is able to bring programs like these ones. So please do give us some stars anytime that you are able to. Was that Dr. Mutale? Did you want to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Knwilimba, I wanted to have a follow-up question there, which is about rural-urban drift. I see that most of the produce that is produced in the rural areas is then transferred to the cities, and it is the cities that benefit more. Is there a way the government can try to...
Rick Chira, please, could you mute yourself?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was saying that a lot of the produce that is produced in the rural areas ends up in the cities where it is consumed, and a large number of a large amount of the income is spent in the cities and not in the rural areas. And that's how actually the rural areas remain impoverished. How can we, with the policies of UPND of decentralization or devolution, how can we make sure that a big chunk of money remains in the rural areas instead of migrating a lot of this money into the cities? Is there a way to locate industries within the rural areas, industries that will add value to the products that are produced in the rural areas? For instance, having mealie meal industries within the rural areas so that they can employ the young ones and all the people that are employable, and all other types of industries. How can we make sure that they remain in the rural areas and money and capital remain in the rural areas for the development of rural areas? How can we stop thinking city, town, and only mainly focus on the rural areas? Because that's where a lot of people are located.
Yeah, yes, Doc. Unfortunately, we don't have much time on this program. It's going to be a very short program because the PS is going somewhere else. So we just have about a minute. We'll let him answer that, and then perhaps we can bring in Mr. Chirwa, if you are there. I think he has disappeared. Or perhaps, PS, you can go ahead and respond to Dr. Mutale.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mtale. Unfortunately, I've very few seconds remaining, and probably I can appeal to Mr. Mapanza that if there is an opportunity, we can still, I think, have a chat even next week. That said, the essence of CDF is basically to, I think, reverse the trend of the rural-urban drift. Here we are saying money will now move from the center to the rural constituencies. And this impliedly will now force people to move from the centers to the rural areas, because the funds now will be down there, out there in the rural areas. This is the simple scenario that is going to happen. And you'll see a lot of people following money, because money will be in the rural areas. There will be no money sitting in Lusaka. There will be no money sitting in Ndola. And that in itself will compel people to go out there. But even when they go out there, our concept, our principle is to ensure that the rural dwellers have a benefit of these resources that are being channeled. So we'll definitely, in this case, I think he manage the rural urban, probably it will be now the urban rural drift, if there is such a thing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bwalya. It's really a pity. Normally, this program is for 1 hour, at least 1 hour. Sometimes we go for 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And this was really, really short. And I think, as you suggest, if you are available,
Next week, I'll definitely make myself available.
We could continue next week from 20 hours.
The pleasure will be mine.
Oh, that's great. Then for now, we'll leave it at that. And as you have heard, viewers, we are going to continue with this program next week on Saturday, beginning 20 hours. Thank you so much for making an appearance, Mr. Bwalya.
It's been wonderful chatting with you and the other participants out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bwalya. PS, we really do appreciate. This is a very important, I think, topic, and it would be important that through Mr. Knwilimba we can journey together.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was really. I wish we had more time.
Can we conclude the program? We're still live. Can we conclude?
Oh, in fact, I was concluding. I said that since Mr. Bwalya didn't have much time today, we will continue this program next week on Saturday from 20 hours so that we can discuss more on this critical program. Thank you for now.
Although I still feel that the issue of CDF is a good idea,